Joining us now for a word brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin, and good morning, Vimbai.
Good morning, Adefemi.
How's
How are you
everybody?
today?
I'm okay, thank you so much.
I saw you were pepper souping and jolloffing.
Oh,
you went to
we
weddings.
had a wonderful weekend. You know I love a wedding.
Yes.
We had a wedding. So last week, Saturday was part 2 of the nikah we went to the week before, and it was wonderful, honestly. God, love a wedding. God bless the new couple. Let me tell you what's happening around the
You
world.
want me to make a comment?
Yes, of course you may make a comment.
Okay.
Go ahead. No.
I
don't want to make a comment.
Let me hear. Tell me. Will you whisper
Maybe
in my
he wants
ear?
to ask if you caught the bouquet.
Okay, when are you going to... Oh, okay.
You know, this was a Muslim wedding, so there wasn't so much a throwing of bouquet, not at the trad on Saturday, but hopefully soon we will have some good news for you. We'll find out together, won't we? All right, let me tell you what's happening around the world. A 45-year-old man has been arrested after at least eight people were injured during an attack at a protest in Boulder, Colorado. Now, a crowd had gathered for an event held for the hostages still held in Gaza when the suspect, one Mohammed Sabri Soliman, allegedly shouted "Free Palestine" before throwing a device, some type of a flamethrower, into a group of people who had assembled in this pedestrianized zone. Now, local police say they had started receiving calls at about 1:26 p.m. local time about a man with a weapon and that people were being set on fire. When police did respond, they found people with injuries consistent with burns. Now, a suspect was pointed out to officers, and that man was taken into custody and then to the hospital with minor injuries himself. Though the FBI has stated that it is going to be investigating this attack as an act of terrorism, there is no evidence yet that the man was connected to a wider group. Now, dozens of Palestinians were shot dead near an aid distribution site in Gaza on Sunday. Now, Palestinian officials say that Israel's military is responsible for the firing at civilians, a claim Israel denies. Now, the incident is the latest in which Palestinians have been killed while attempting to receive aid from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a US-backed mechanism to distribute aid to the embattled and hungry enclave after a months-long Israeli blockade. Now, the GHF has been criticized by the United Nations and others who warn it risks further displacing Palestinians and endangering civilians. And that was from last week. Now, previous distributions of aid at its sites had been marred by chaos and violence. Now, the International Committee of the Red Cross said that it was the highest number of weapon wounded in a single incident since the establishment of the field hospital over a year ago, and that it far surpassed the capacity of its 60-bed facility. And finally, to mainland Europe now, and populist right-wing opposition candidate Karol Nawrocki, backed by the Law and Justice Party, has won Poland's presidential election, defeating his pro-European rival, Rafał Trzaskowski, in a nail-bitingly close contest. Now, official results show that Nawrocki took 50.89% of the votes in the runoff, with Trzaskowski on 49.11%, just to show how close it was. Now, Nawrocki's victory is a major blow for the coalition government led by Donald Tusk and is expected to prolong the current political deadlock in the country, as well as complicate the country's position in Europe. Now, the results come after a dramatic turnaround, given the first exit poll published just as the polls closed has suggested a narrow win for Trzaskowski by just 0.6%, prompting him to declare victory. But Nawrocki did not concede, saying that he remained confident that he would win when all the votes were counted. Now, during this bitterly fought and often bad-tempered campaign in recent weeks, the two men had offered very different versions of Poland, and the result of the race will have enormous implications for the country's political future, given the president's ability to veto government legislation. Those are your stories from around the world.
Thank you so much, Adefemi. I think it's extremely important for the global community that stands pro-Palestine, pro the humanitarian situation, pro an end to the war, to condemn and separate itself from the extremism that is now being shown by certain rogue individuals who are taking advantage of the situation. This is the second incident of such a nature in about a week. The last was the assassination of the Israeli diplomats in New York. So it's very important for us to not to separate these issues, as we see that the Trump administration is struggling to separate the issues between those who are within their rights to stand for Palestine and those who are now taking advantage of this and taking it to extremism, to terrorism, and to a number of different things. And it's just important to note that whether you're pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, being pro-Palestine does not equate supporting terrorism. That's a very important distinction, that needs to be made. Very quickly to Poland, where Naroki, an amateur boxer, I believe, who is known for taking part in street brawls. I believe there's a fist fight he had with some football hooligans some years ago. Another thing he's notorious for is that he wrote a book some years ago under a pseudonym. And what this gentleman went and did is he went under disguise in an interview to promote his own book because he wanted to give a very good review for his book. So they later discovered that, in fact, it was him in disguise promoting his own book. But, this is the person who Poland has voted for. And what are the key issues? The key issues are Euroscepticism. He stands for, more of a pull away from the European community. NATO. It will be interesting to see how he navigates NATO because his body language has shown that there's a possibility he may not be prepared to ratify, NATO participation for Poland moving forward. Why? Because he feels this exacerbates issues with Russia. Now, of course, we know that Poland is a neighbor to Ukraine and has been home to Ukrainian refugees. So the question is, what will happen to those people under Naroki? But, we'll stand and see because it's one thing to be extremely populist and controversial in your campaign. Governance is another issue. So let's see how that plays out. Tchaikovsky himself, I think one of the biggest things that it was such a thin margin, so it's difficult to say one of the things that led to his defeat. But the reason why there's so much backing for his opposition is because many people feel that he's elitist, bourgeois, not connected to the people. I believe in Poland they call him bonjour, because he's multilingual, educated all around the world, a veteran politician who has held several different seats in Poland. But, the people have spoken with such a tight margin. Also a lesson in not declaring your own victory too soon. Exactly. This is why we always have to wait for the electoral bodies to do their work and to declare the victory before we jump the gun, because in some other countries, this could have caused an upheaval.
Absolutely.
Okay, what has happened in Poland? It's a major political upset. And what we're likely to see going forward is a lot of political confrontations, because the orientation of the man that has emerged as president is different from that of President Donald Tusk. Now, Donald Tusk will have expected that he will find somebody who will work with him, to collaborate with him after Duda, who was engaged in serious confrontations with him. Then this man, who was considered the underdog, a populist firebrand, who had faced a lot of scandals, particularly with getting involved in football fights and also issues about real estate, is the one that has emerged. But what has happened in Poland is interesting to the extent that in the first round of voting, Kwarowski, I think that's his name, lost out. Sarkowski, I don't know how to pronounce
There's
his
so
name.
many Z's and silent W's, so it's quite difficult with Polish names.
He won.
Yes.
Purportedly. But, the man who has now been declared winner says, no, the fight was not yet over. So in the second round, he ended up winning 50.8%. Nawuski. That's his name, Karol Nawuski. And Karol Nawuski, he ended up winning 50.89%. But I say it's an upset. It was a razor-edge election. Yeah. But this conservative historian is pro-Trump. So there will be a lot of issues on the conservative front about, abortion, about Catholic principles, and all of that. But the big issue is the 2027 parliamentary elections that will happen. And that's what puts President Donald Tusk in a very difficult position. But we're going to see a lot of political confrontations. And the reason Nawoski emerged was because the third place far-right candidate decided to align with him. And with that alignment, he was able to obtain the first round of voting. Now, anti-Semitism in Boulder, Colorado. Now, the gentleman, 42-year-old Salimona, I think that's his name, Mohammed.
Sabri Salman, yes,
Mohammed Salimon, or Salimona, Suleiman, he was saying, free Palestine, they are killers. Now, there's a spread of anti-Semitism in the United States, either in the universities or, as happened at the Jewish Museum in New York, involving a diplomat and his girlfriend, and also now in Boulder, Colorado. The governor of Colorado says they have structures in place to prevent this kind of attack, but it has not worked. But our view is that hate stands condemned. Terror is not acceptable. Anti-Semitism is an assault on the collective humanity that we all share. Now, there have been some theorists that maybe Suleiman has mental issues. I mean, he was unclad, and he was carrying gardening chemical sprayers and Molotov cocktails. And the report was that it was as if the skin was peeling off the people that he attacked. 8 persons have died as a result of that. It's a comment about what is happening in the Middle East and how global the situation between Israel and Hamas is, and how unfortunate it is that all over the world, this terror politics of hate will spread. Finally, Gaza. About 21 persons were killed. Now, the foundation for this, we have said, was that after the March 18 ceasefire, Israel sustained hostilities. Israel has accepted the ceasefire brokered by the United States, but Hamas has not accepted it. Hamas wants a complete ceasefire. Israel says it wants the remaining 54, 58 hostages released without conditions. And Hamas is saying, look, let this war end. But Israel controls access to Gaza, the Gaza Strip, whether by land or by air. And it has blocked humanitarian aid to that territory. This is what is causing all of this. Israel is saying, Israeli Defense Forces is saying, we are not responsible for this attack. But the attack being closely associated with distribution centers of aid in Rafah, that's the place where, the assault occurred, makes it very suspicious. And I think that the international community cannot give up on ensuring access to persons in Gaza territory who are hors de combat, which is a violation of international law, as the British have pointed out, the French have pointed out, and yet we have this continuing devastation in that territory. What's the name of this young girl? Greta Thunberg. She's on her way to Palestine on an airship to say we have to support the people of Palestine. So you cannot abandon the people just because Israel and Netanyahu and the far right in Israel believe that they can violate international law at will.
Well, thank you both for your great submissions to the World Brief. Let's move on to newspaper headlines across Nigeria. And let's start with this day. This day does lead with the commander of the U.S. Africa Command, which is part of the U.S. Marine Corps, General Michael Langley, blaming this rising state of attacks by terrorist groups in Nigeria and other African countries on its own forced exit from bases in some neighboring countries, including Niger and Chad, pointing to its inability to effectively monitor the activities of the violent organizations. Now, if you weren't already aware, AFRICOM was established back in 2007, and it's responsible for U.S. military operations, partnerships, and security cooperation across the African continent, excluding Egypt, though. Now, in recent years, AFRICOM has faced growing challenges as African nations reassess foreign military partnerships and geopolitical competition increases, particularly from the likes of Russia and China. To the New Telegraph, and it leads with a fully loaded bus carrying traders from Enugu State being hijacked on Saturday evening by suspected Fulani herdsmen in Benue State. Now, it's believed passengers, including women, were taken, while one woman was shot, in addition to also separately being severely wounded, and she was left behind due to her bleeding. She's currently receiving treatment. Now, in a similar vein, the Vanguard reports that 15 Catholic parishes have been closed as 50 people are killed by armed herders in Makurdi, a diocese also in Benue State. Now, moving on to politics now, and the leadership leads with the simmering unease within the All Progressives Congress over automatic tickets for the party's National Assembly members ahead of this 2027 general election. The Daily Sun, though, reports that opposition governors from the PDP are in fear that staying in the party will jeopardize their chances of getting a successful second term. The pressure to defect comes as the PDP governors are concerned about the precedent set in Plateau State, where courts sacked PDP State Assembly lawmakers and some National Assembly members due to unresolved internal party crises at the national level. The fear is that if the crisis persists, any candidate nominated by the PDP, including governors seeking re-elections, risk their election nullified by the courts. Now, The Guardian leads with the opposition coalition shopping around for a candidate. That being said, The Guardian also reports that Saudi Arabia has evicted 205,000 unauthorized pilgrims from Mecca. Essentially, these pilgrims didn't have the correct permits to perform the Hajj pilgrimage, which leads me to remind you that we are 4 days away from Salah and 6 days away from Ojide Oba. I know Rufai's not here to ask me, but we're almost there.
No, we're on behalf of Rufai,
okay.
we're looking forward. I hope the ram is marinating.
It is definitely on its way. They're still alive.
Okay, they're still
alive.
alive.
Sacrificed until the weekend.
Okay, good.
Just so that they're fresh food when they get back to Lagos.
Marinate it well for us. It's very
Absolutely.
soft.
You'll love it. You will. You will.
All right.